All right, we are going on to photosynthesis for our next unit, for Unit 5. Okay, so we've already talked about energy and cellular respiration. Energy, just to give you a little bit more of a definition, is the ability to do work. And so for a cell, we've already talked about this, but they use energy to grow and repair. We can use it to transport things across the membrane. We can make cellular products, and for reproduction also. So we have organisms called autotrophs, or producers, that convert sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water into glucose. All right, producers can make food for themselves. All right. However, when we were talking about cellular respiration, we were talking about, at first, just heterotrophs or consumers. So that would be somebody like you and me, which we cannot make food for ourselves. So we have to take in food and then we can convert it to energy. Autotrophs, like plants, on the other hand, can make their own food, make their own glucose from sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water, and then they can undergo cellular respiration also to make their own energy. So they do it all by themselves. Okay, a little bit of background on photosynthesis. So the only things that can do photosynthesis are autotrophs. Okay, they still perform cellular respiration to release energy from the glucose they make, but they also make their own food. So we cannot undergo photosynthesis, but some bacteria can, and then obviously all of your plants. Okay, so how do we capture the energy of life? How do we get energy? So all organisms require energy. The autotrophs take it from the sun and store it as glucose, and then, just like us, they take that glucose and convert it into energy. So, for photosynthesis, our equation is carbon dioxide, 6 of them, plus 6 molecules of water with light involved gives us C6H12O6, or our lovely glucose, and 6 molecules of oxygen. Okay, so if you notice, we started out cellular respiration with these as our reactants, and we ended up with these as our products. So photosynthesis is just the exact flip opposite of cellular respiration. Okay, so you're taking carbon dioxide and water, adding some sunlight in, and then you are getting glucose and oxygen out, which is why plants give off some extra oxygen. Okay, so where does photosynthesis occur for plants? So when we did cells, we mentioned that plants had 3 extra things that animal cells didn't, and one of those was a chloroplast. Okay, so these chloroplasts are where photosynthesis is occurring. Okay, they have a pigment called chlorophyll A that helps collect the sun's energy. And light is in particles, and the way we get light's energy is something called a photon. So that's just a light energy particle. All right, so there are 3 things that are important in this chloroplast. 1, 2, 3. The granum, which is right here, the thylakoids, and the stroma. All right, so the thylakoids are these lovely little individual, like green pancakes. All right, they are where a certain thing called the light reactions of photosynthesis happen. And a stack of these, so these 3 right here, are called a granum. All right, and just like cells and just like mitochondria, there's this fluid inside of it, and this is going to be called our stroma. All right, so that's the fluid that surrounds the thylakoids. This is where our light-independent reactions, or the Calvin cycle, is going to happen. Okay, so just like in cellular respiration where we had some things happening in the cytoplasm, something happened in the mitochondria, in photosynthesis, we have this happening in the chloroplast where there's 2 different areas. We have the reactions in the thylakoids, and then we have the reactions in the stroma. So there's 2 different locations. Okay, so this is an overview. You'll see this diagram a lot over photosynthesis. So if you notice, there's 2 distinct steps. All right, we have the light reactions on the left side, and we have the Calvin cycle, or sometimes called the light-independent reactions, on the right. So the light reactions obviously use light. So this is going to be this is what I want you to pay attention to. In the light reactions, we use water and some light. It undergoes a couple different things, and it lets out oxygen, ATP, or a lovely energy molecule, and some NADPH. Now, NADPH looks a lot like NADH from cellular respiration, so guess what? This is an electron carrier. Okay, so those little guys are coming back into play once again. All right, for our light-independent reactions of the Calvin cycle, if you notice we've got some carbon dioxide coming in. We export some sugars, glucose, sucrose, whatever. And then we use these ATP and NADPHs and recycle them back to the light reactions. So here's a little bit more in detail. Okay, so the light reactions, these take place in the chloroplast, specifically in the thylakoids. All right, so if you see this right here, that green stack, this is where the light reactions are happening. Okay, so our reactants for the light reactions are water and light, so here and here. And our products are oxygen, ATP, and NADPH. Okay, so we're taking water, making oxygen by using light, and then we're going to use that ATP and NADPH in the next set of cycles. All right, so this is just a more detailed version of that. You don't need to know the details of this. I just want you to see something. So if you notice, this lovely little thing looks really familiar. It should. See how we have electron transport here and some ATP formation with ATP synthase? If you notice, this almost looks exactly like our electron transport chain from earlier, but our hydrogen ions are moving a little bit differently. So those light reactions are very similar to the ETC of the cellular respiration of oxidative phosphorylation, where we were moving electrons down the electron transport chain to pump hydrogen ions to power our ATP enzyme. All right, so the same exact thing. This is just light reaction, so we have to use light coming in. So if you notice this photosystem 2 and photosystem 1, this is just where the light comes in. And we use it to help with our electrons. And see, we use water this time and get oxygen instead of using oxygen in cellular respiration and getting water. So it's just the opposite. All right, our second part is the Calvin cycle. This takes place in the stroma, so that's that liquid-filled part of the chloroplast. So not in the green pancakes, we're now in the liquid. Okay, we take carbon dioxide, ATP, and NADPH and produce sugars, ATP, and NADP+. So we're just reusing those. All right, here is the more detailed version of the Calvin cycle, which is happening in the stroma. So if you notice, it looks similar to the Krebs cycle. All right, so what we're have happening here is instead of the Krebs cycle, where we took a big carbon and broke it down into carbon dioxide, we are going to take carbon dioxide and make it into bigger sugars. So the only detail I want you to know from this part is when we take quite a few carbon dioxides, and we are going to use an enzyme. This is the only really name I want you to know for this. And this enzyme is called Rubisco. Okay, and Rubisco is actually a shorter name for ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. So instead of using that very long word, we use the term Rubisco. All right, easy enough. So all that is it is an enzyme to take these carbon dioxides and put them together into 3 carbon molecules. Okay, so kind of like we were, instead of taking pyruvate and breaking it down, we're now taking carbon dioxide and putting it together. All right, so this is an enzyme. All right, and if you notice along here, that ATP and NADPH that we made earlier is now being used in this cycle in order to make those sugars. So this keeps going through this cycle just like the Krebs cycle, and instead of breaking down sugars, we are now making it, and then they can modify them later and make glucose and other sugars that the plants need for food and energy so that they can undergo the cellular respiration cycle in order to produce energy from the food they made from the sun. Okay, so in summary, we have taken carbon dioxide, which we used in the Calvin cycle. We've taken water, which we used in the light reactions. We've taken some sunlight, which we used in the light reactions, and we have made glucose, which came out of the Calvin cycle. And we made oxygen, which was from the light reactions. All right, so those are the inputs and outputs for each of those types of reactions. Honestly, that's about all you need to know as far as the nitty-gritty details, so we're not doing as much with the electron carriers and stuff that we did with cellular respiration, since it's almost the same, just in the exact opposite order. All right, the one thing we are going to now look at in labs and things in the next 2 weeks is we are going to look at how and what factors affect photosynthesis. Okay, so we have a fun little lab on that, and we have a couple other things that we're going to look into and see how we can change photosynthesis, how we can make it faster, how we can make it slower, and see exactly how plants can best set themselves up for making the most food possible.